The crisis didn't arrive overnight. It crept in, as American farmers watched Washington and Beijing trade threats in 2018. The Trump administration imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, aiming to protect U.S. industries. China retaliated, targeting American agriculture: soybeans, sorghum, pork, corn, and cotton. For years, U.S. farmers had built China into their biggest market, relying on its demand. Suddenly, tariffs made American crops too expensive for Chinese buyers. A shipment of U.S. soybeans now faced a 25% tax. Sorghum was hit with a 179% tariff, shutting it out overnight. Farmers who had just planted their fields were blindsided. Their business model, built on global trade, was shattered by politics. The shock quickly turned to grim reality. The world no longer wanted their crops at a price that could sustain them. They were told to be patriots, but patriotism doesn't pay the bills or cover the loan on a new combine. As the trade war escalated, a sense of betrayal spread across the Midwest and Great Plains. These farmers, the backbone of America's food system, felt like collateral damage in a fight they didn't start. The impact was immediate and brutal. Crop prices fell, contracts were canceled, and silos filled with unsold grain. The foundation of rural America was shaken, and the future suddenly looked uncertain. The trade war wasn't just a policy dispute, it was a direct hit to the livelihoods of those who feed the nation. For many, the crisis marked the end of an era of prosperity and the start of a long struggle for survival. The American heartland was left to pick up the pieces, unsure if things would ever return to normal. The scars of this conflict would linger long after the headlines faded. With U.S. farm goods now too costly, China didn't wait for politics to change, they looked south. Brazil and Argentina ramped up production, eager to fill the void left by American farmers. New contracts were signed, infrastructure improved, and trade routes rewired. China, once America's top agricultural customer, was forging new alliances. Brazilian farmers cleared more land for soybeans, and their government invested in better roads and ports. For U.S. farmers, this wasn't just a lost season, it was the loss of a generation's worth of trust in business. U.S. soybean exports to China plummeted by over 75% in the first year of tariffs. No other market could absorb the volume China once bought. Even if tariffs vanished, China's supply chain is now diversified and more resilient. The U.S. is seen as an unpredictable partner, and rebuilding trust will be slow, if it happens at all. The perception of American agriculture as a reliable supplier has been deeply wounded. The global market has moved on, and the U.S. may never reclaim its former dominance. The trade war's damage is not easily undone. Losing China triggered a collapse in crop prices, basic economics when demand vanishes. Soybean prices hit decade lows, and farmers were forced to sell at a loss. Contracts were canceled, and unsold grain piled up in silos. The shock rippled through rural economies. Farmers stopped spending and local businesses suffered. Equipment sales plummeted, suppliers went unpaid, and Main Street diners emptied out. Farm debts soared to levels not seen since the 1980s crisis. Bankers tightened credit, making it harder to plant next year's crop. The entire rural ecosystem, dealerships, mechanics, grocery stores felt the pain. The USDA estimated the trade war cost U.S. agriculture $27 billion in just 2 years. Government aid arrived, but many called it inadequate and unfair. Farmers wanted trade, not aid. A chance to earn a living, not a government check. The economic health of small towns is tied to the land, and when farms suffer, communities wither. The trade war's impact was felt far beyond the fields. The financial crisis brought a hidden cost, an epidemic of stress and despair among farmers. Farming is more than a job, it's an identity, often passed down for generations. Watching that legacy crumble under debt and market collapse is devastating. Isolation and a culture of stoicism make it hard to seek help, fueling a silent mental health crisis. Suicides and calls to farm hotlines surged as families faced impossible choices. Rural communities lack mental health resources, and stigma remains a barrier. Grassroots groups are working to break the silence, but the crisis is bigger than any one community can solve. The toll on families and communities is profound and lasting. The pain didn't stop at the farm gate, it spread through the entire food supply chain. Pork producers lost China, the world's biggest pork market, almost overnight. Domestic oversupply caused prices to collapse, hurting hog farmers and reducing demand for feed crops. The ripple effect hit beef, dairy, fruit, and nut growers, anyone reliant on exports to China. Tariffs on steel and aluminum raised the cost of farm equipment, squeezing margins even tighter. Farmers faced rising costs and falling prices, pushing many to the brink. Processing plants, port authorities, and shipping companies all felt the slowdown. The entire logistical network supporting American agriculture was disrupted. The trade war revealed just how interconnected the food system is. A tariff on electronics in D.C. could bankrupt a hog farmer in Iowa. The crisis exposed the fragility of the entire supply chain. The trade war's deepest wound was the loss of trust in American agriculture. For decades, the U.S. was the world's most reliable food supplier. Politics didn't interfere with trade. That reputation is now shattered. Global buyers learned the risks of relying on one supplier and are diversifying. Countries like China and Japan are signing new trade deals and investing elsewhere. Even if tariffs end, the U.S. faces a more competitive, skeptical market. Farmers are cutting back on investments, holding on to old equipment and delaying upgrades. This slow decline threatens long-term productivity and competitiveness. The crisis has accelerated consolidation. Small family farms are being squeezed out by larger operations. Rural communities are hollowed out and the future of the family farm is more fragile than ever. The scars of the trade war will shape American agriculture for years to come. The character of rural America is changing, perhaps forever. This crisis isn't just a farm problem, it's a national issue. The path forward starts with ending the tariff war and restoring stable trade relationships. The U.S. must rebuild trust and open new markets for American farm products. Support for farmers must go beyond temporary aid. Debt relief and investment in rural infrastructure are essential. Mental health care, broadband, and support for rural entrepreneurs are critical for recovery. This is a wake-up call to value our food producers and invest in their resilience. The fate of American farmers is tied to the nation's future. Allowing this crisis to fester isn't an option. Urgent, collaborative action is needed to secure America's food future. The Heartland's recovery will shape the country for generations to come.